Ahmose I, sometimes written as Ahmose or Ahmose, meaning Aya, the moon is born, was a pharaoh and founder of the 18th dynasty of Egypt, classified as the first dynasty of the New Kingdom of Egypt, the era in which ancient Egypt achieved the peak of its power. He was a member of the Theban royal house, the son of Pharaoh Queennefertitidocumentary and brother of the last pharaoh of the 17th dynasty, Ahmose. During the reign of his father or grandfather, Thebes rebelled against the Hyksos, the rulers of Lower Egypt. When he was 7 years old, his father was killed, and he was about 10 when his brother died of unknown causes after reigning only 3 years. Ahmose I assumed the throne after the death of his brother, and upon coronation became known as Nefertiti. Nbpftjr, the Lord of Strength is Ra, Pharaoh. Rank: 25 years in the mid-16th century BC Egyptian chronology. Disputed 25 years and 4 months in Monado. Predecessor Ahmose Upper Egypt Kamudi Lower Egypt Successor Amenhotep I Consort Ahmose Nefertari, God's wife of Amen. Ahmose Sid Ahmose. Ahmose Henatame Hu. Kasmet, then the Pit Children. Ahmose Maritamu Namos Side Amunsi Amunamos Ankamenhedib, Iramisemu Nefrefanter. Teomo Therahatep Idi Etz. 1525 Bikbiriamami found in Deir el Bari Cache, but was likely originally buried in Abydos or Dra Abu el Nagamonument Spal at Avaris. Temple of Ammon at Karnak. Temple of Montu at Hermonth is dynasty 18th dynasty. During his reign, Ahmose completed the conquest and expulsion of the Hyksos from the Nile Delta, restored Theban rule over the whole of Egypt, and successfully reasserted Egyptian power in its formerly subject territories of Nubia and Canaan. He then reorganized the administration of the country, reopened quarries, mines and trade routes, and began massive construction projects of a type that had not been undertaken since the time of the Middle Kingdom. This building program culminated in the construction of the last pyramid built by native Egyptian rulers. Ahmose's reign laid the foundations for the New Kingdom, under which Egyptian power reached its peak. His reign is usually dated to the mid-16th century BC. Ahmose descended from the Theban 17th dynasty. His grandfather and grandmother, Senectaner Ahmose and Tadashuri, had at least 12 children, including Queennefertitidocumentary and Ahmose the brother and sister. According to the tradition of Egyptian queens, married, and had sons Ahmose and Ahmose I, as well as several daughters. Ahmose I followed in the tradition of his father, and married several of his sisters, making Ahmose Nefertari his chief wife. They had several children, including daughters Maritamen Sidamuna and sons Siamina, Ahmose Ankh, Amenhotep I and Ramos of the and B designations after the names are a convention used by Egyptologists to distinguish between royal children and wives that otherwise have the same name. They may also have been the parents of Mut-Nofret, who would become the wife of later successor Thutmose I. Ahmose Ankh was Ahmose's heir apparent, but he preceded his father in death. Sometime between Ahmose's 17th and 22nd regnal year, Ahmose was succeeded instead by his eldest surviving son, Amenhotep I, with whom he might have shared a short coregency. There was no distinct break in the line of the royal family between the 17th and 18th dynasties. The priest and historian Monado, author of A History of Egypt, written in the 3rd century BC during the reign of Ptolemy II 283 to 246 BC, the now lost Aegyptiaca Alpha Gamma Upsilon Pi Tau Iota Alpha Kappa, considered the final expulsion of the Hyksos after nearly a century and the restoration of native Egyptian rule over the whole country a significant enough event to warrant the start of a new dynasty. Ahmose's reign can be fairly accurately dated, using the heliacal rise of Sirius and his successor's reign, but because of disputes over from where the observation was made, he has been assigned a reign from 1570 to 1546 BC, 1560 to 1537 BC, 1551 to 1527 BC, and 1539 to 1514 BC by various sources. According to Josephus in Contra Apionem, and Theophilus of Antioch in his Apologia ad Autolycum, Monedos Egyptiochus stated that the pharaoh who expulsed the Hyksos from Egypt was named Thutmose and reigned for 25 years and 4 months. At the opposite, according to the Byzantine scholar George Syncellus, Sextus Julius Africanus wrote that the Egyptiocha reported the king to be named Ames. Syncellus also notes that Eusebius in his Chronicon told that an Ahmose or Ahmose, depending on the version of Eusebius, is mentioned in the Egyptiocha as reigning 25 years and founding the 18th dynasty from Thebes. The 25 years figure is seemingly supported by a year 22 inscription from his reign at the stone quarries of Torah. A medical examination of his mummy indicates that he died when he was about 35, supporting a 25-year reign if he came to the throne. At the age of 10. The radiocarbon date range for the start of his reign is 1570 to 1544 BC, the mean point of which is 1557 BC. The conflict between the local kings of Thebes and the Hyksos king Apepi had started during the reign of Ahmose's father, Seqenenretau, and would be concluded after almost 30 years of intermittent conflict and war during his own reign. Seqenenretau was possibly killed in a battle against the Hyksos, as his much-wounded mummy gruesomely suggests, and his successor, most likely Ahmose's elder brother, is known to have attacked and raided the lands around the Hyksos capital. Iver's modern Tel El Daba, Ahmose evidently had a short reign, as his highest attested regnal year is year 3, and was succeeded by Ahmose. Apepi died around a decade later. Ahmose ascended the throne when he was still a child, so his mother, Ahotep, reigned as regent until he was of age. Judging by some of the descriptions of her regal roles while in power, including the general honorific carer for Egypt, she effectively consolidated the Theban power base in the years before Ahmose assumed full control. If in fact Apepi II was a successor to Apepi I, then he is thought to have remained bottled up in the delta during Ahotep's regency, because his name does not appear on any monuments or objects south of Bubastis. Conquest of the Hyksos. Ahmose began the conquest of Lower Egypt held by the Hyksos starting around the 11th year of Kamuti's reign, but the sequence of events is not universally agreed upon. Analyzing the events of the conquest prior to the siege of the Hyksos capital of Avaris is extremely difficult. Almost everything known comes from a brief but invaluable military commentary on the back of the Rhine mathematical papyrus, consisting of brief diary entries, one of which reads, Regnal year 11, 2nd month of Shomu, Heliopolis was entered. 1st month of Akhet, day 23. This southern prince broke into Jared. Foreign campaigns. After defeating the Hyksos, Ahmose began campaigning in Syria and Nubia. A campaign, during his 22nd year, reached Jai in the Levant and perhaps as far as the Euphrates, although the later pharaoh Thutmose I is usually credited with being the first to campaign that far. Ahmose did, however, reach at least as far as Kedem, thought to be near Byblos. According to an ostrakon in the tomb of his wife, Ahmose Nefertari, details on this particular campaign are scarce, as the source of most of the information. Ahmose, son of Abana, served in the Egyptian navy and did not take part in this land expedition. However, it can be inferred from archaeological surveys of southern Canaan that during the late 16th century BC, Ahmose and his immediate successors intended only to break the power of the Hyksos by destroying their cities, and not to conquer Canaan. Many sites there were completely laid waste and not rebuilt during this period, something a pharaoh bent on conquest and tribute would not be likely to do. Ahmose's campaigns in Nubia are better documented. Soon after the first Nubian campaign, a Nubian named Atta rebelled against Ahmose, but was crushed. After this attempt, an anti-Theban Egyptian named Teshin gathered many rebels in Nubia, but he too was defeated. Ahmose restored Egyptian rule over Nubia, which was controlled from a new administrative center established at Buin, when re-establishing the national government. Ahmose appears to have rewarded various local princes who supported his cause, and that of his dynastic predecessors, with the reunification of Upper and Lower Egypt under Ahmose. A renewal of royal support for the arts and monumental construction occurred. Ahmose reportedly devoted a tenth of all the productive output towards the service of the traditional gods.
Continued in the next video.